Hello, everyone. Thank you and welcome to the Business Equity for Indy Procurement Roundtable. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping things. This is a regular Zoom meeting because we wanted to keep it as interactive and engaging as possible. But that also means if your microphone is on, we can hear everything that's going on in the background. So please mute and feel free to go off camera unless you're speaking. That's okay too. And then also we have a very full agenda, so we may not get to everyone's questions and comments during the presentation. So feel free to put those in the chat. If we do not get those answered during this event, we will follow up afterwards. Okay. So thank you all for being here today. I know you could have been anywhere. It's a very busy season for many of you. And so you chose to make equity a priority today, and we thank you for that. We also know that we can't do this alone. We have to have shared ownership and your support. So I'm appreciative that you've joined us today. So for those who don't know me, I am Stacia Murphy, Director of Equity Outreach and Strategic Partnerships for the Indy Chamber and leading this initiative. I will go over our agenda quickly, and then we'll turn it over to some wonderful guests today to hear from them, both on capital contribution, which is one of our number 8 best practices, and as well as the success within the Sheridan 38th and Sheridan project. And then we'll break into small groups to get into a little bit more about some of your challenges, maybe your opportunities to grow, and even to just share some of your success stories. So that's the agenda for today. And before we begin, I know there's several new people that have not joined a procurement roundtable before. So briefly, I want to give an overview of what Business Equity for Indy is. So Business Equity for Indy is a joint venture between Central Indiana Corporate Partnership and the Indy Chamber with support from the Indianapolis Urban League. It was created in the wake of the summer of 2020 after the killing of George Floyd and the growing realities of the COVID pandemic. And our charge there was to grow a more inclusive business climate and build greater equity and economic opportunity for Indy region's Black residents and people of color. Business Equity for Indy established several task forces to advance equity in 5 areas. One of those areas is the Procurement and Participation Task Force. Our charge was to increase the launch, growth, and success rates of Black and minority enterprises. And we spent several months listening to Black-owned businesses, supplier diversity practitioners, digging into available data, the disparity study at the city, at the state, and came to the conclusion that we needed to create this here roundtable to invite all Central Indiana businesses to sign the pledge, to adopt our 8 best practices, and to learn and grow from one another and allow us to support you in that process. So that is where we are today. I also want to introduce our Business Equity for Indy procurement family. First, our co-chairs, John Thompson of Thompson Distribution, Craig Reed of Corteva AgriScience, and Ilya Yufa of Eli Lilly. Our sponsors, Gordon Brooks, Chief Procurement Officer of Lilly, and Ian Nicolini, Chief Operations Officer for the Indy Chamber. Also, all of this work couldn't get done if it wasn't for our dedicated core team that really handles some of the day-to-day operations of this initiative. Myself is on the team, but also Carolyn Mosby of Mid-States MSDC, Debbie Evans of Engaging Solutions, and Tiara Sims at the Indy Chamber. And I also want to give a shout out to our steering committee that helped to inform much of our practices and efforts going forward. That's Michelle Morin of Corteva, Tanya Sisko of Cummins, Jamie Samuels of Eli Lilly, Eric Newport of Eskenazi Health, Holly Harrington, Indianapolis Airport Authority, Larry Williams and Anita Williams from Indy Black Chamber, Richard Wise and Barris Kiar from Indiana University, Jarvis Jointer from JQOL, and Imhotep Adisa from the Kepler Institute. Thank you all for your tremendous support just to get this up and running. And last but not least, all of these organizations here have taken the pledge. They've all signed on to publicly demonstrate their commitment to advancing equity for our Black-owned businesses and other minority-owned businesses. We appreciate you for stepping out here, going above and beyond, and actually being models for all of our participants. And I want to say that we hope everyone that's joining today becomes one of these wonderful models for success, and that you take the pledge as well. And again, as a reminder, part of the pledge is just making sure your company is adopting our 8 best practices, or 8 pillars, for which we call them as well. One of which, number 8, is about your role in contributing capital to this. One of the biggest barriers to some of these Black business enterprises growing that we heard was their lack of access to capital. And of course, it takes capital in order to overcome that barrier. And so today we will spend a little bit of time talking about what investment looks like. And the big question is always, okay, if I invest, where does that money go? What you see here are the 3 aspects of what your investment can do, both in programming and technical assistance. This both helps us support all of your organizations in adopting these best practices and creating really robust supply diversity programs, but also helps us work with MBEs and making sure that they are contracts ready, and supporting them with access to working capital with our capital fund called the GAP program, so that they can effectively bid on contracts if they don't have that upfront capital. So with that, I want to turn it over to John Thompson, our co-chair, to give you a few more words about your role in contributing to capital. John?
Thanks, Stacia. And you gave a very nice introduction to procurement and participation overall, and also, the role of capital and contributing to capital. I think we've all often heard that one of the big barriers to new business formation in general is access to capital. And certainly that problem is multiplied many times over when it comes to Black-owned businesses and those of businesses started by people of color. So if you could just imagine a second, they've developed a tremendous skill set in a given discipline. I'll just use construction. They may be a great construction project manager in a construction company. They may have had many different roles in that company, estimating, managing projects. They may have started out where they were a superintendent out in the field, actually supervising many. They may have started at the bottom where they were, a worker being supervised, and grew up in the business. And they decide that they want to start a business, and we certainly feel that they have a industry expertise where they could be successful. They may have done a fair amount to prepare themselves in other areas like business, taking some classes and really applying themselves over the years in preparation. Now they're ready to get started. They kind of don't know what to do. I can start a business, get a tax ID number, and get a bank account, and get that business set up, running, bank line of credit before you can finish lunch. But I've been at it a while. If you're new to this, you can't do that. Each one of those tasks that I just set out is just an insurmountable task. What do I do? What kind of business do I form? Anyway, so we want to help those businesses get started. Why? Because we want to help close the racial wealth and income gap, and entrepreneurship is a quick way to do it. We ask you to contribute capital up front so that over time you can contribute less capital, because these new businesses will grow rapidly. They'll hire people. They'll pay a livable wage. or a wage and a career that allows someone to grow into a livable wage. What are they going to do with the money? Stacia kind of outlined 3 areas, but let's dig a little deeper. So you need working capital to grow, and the faster you grow, the more capital you need. Why? You have to buy inventory and supplies in order to satisfy your contract. You've got to. I mean, it's going, no matter what you do, it's going to take that. You've got to hire staff. You may not know how to grow and scale that. We're going to help you with some coaching because there are several ways to do it. One, you can hire people. So you need an accounting manager or CFO or controller. You can hire that person, or you can outsource it. And we may coach you to initially outsource it. But whatever you do, it's going to cost you money. Outsourcing may cost less up front, but it's going to cost you money. And even if you've saved and invested your money, it is probably not enough. And you're not quite ready yet for bank capital. So the Indy Chamber, who is one of the leaders in forming this, along with Central Indiana Corporate Partnership and also the Indianapolis Urban League, the Indy Chamber is very used to providing those roles, but they don't have enough capital to do it all. There are state sources to help. We have the Indiana State Small Business Development Center. It provides some coaching, strategic planning help, and all of that. But it can't provide all the hands-on guidance that's needed. And we've got to help these businesses with programming, strategy, planning. Just pricing is an insurmountable. I've taught many workshops on pricing and pricing strategies and the multi-level layers of pricing so that you can make sure that you're covering your costs. Do you hire an estimator or do you outsource estimating? Either way, it's going to cost you money. And then you have your labor. So you're going to get paid in 30, 60, or 90 days, and you're going to have to pay your labor weekly or bi-weekly. All of these areas require funding. Now, there are several ways to do it. One, you can borrow money at an interest rate, hopefully low, so these companies can afford to repay it. We could even possibly do, in some cases, no interest loans to reduce the burden and pressure on a business. We can grant some funds and services or services. So some of the things we may be able to apply to supply for a period at no charge. Perhaps it's the estimating service or the CFO on the go, the accounting person to help you keep your books and budget. And there may be a way of doing that for a period at no cost. And so that's where the contributing capital piece comes in. Now, who's been doing that to date? Indy Chamber's been doing some of that through their BOI, Business Ownership Initiative.
Hey, John, can I interrupt you
Go
real
ahead.
quick?
Yeah.
We are, Blake and Julie will have to leave at 2:30. Do you mind if we skip to them real quick and then come back to you?
Yes, we can go to them because they were planning to turn it back over to me anyway. So let's do that, Stacia, right now. This is a good break point.
Thank you very much. Julie and Blake, are you on?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much. And there is no one that can speak to the pains and challenges of small business ownership like someone who has the scar tissue and has succeeded. So thank you, John. It couldn't have been better said. And our goal, for Blake and I, our goal today is just to help you all to see where your work on the procurement activity fits in to our chamber's overall regional economic development strategic plan. Some of you may not know, we as the Indy Chamber are the regional economic development entity for the 9-county area. And we are just rolling out the second iteration of our Accelerate Indy regional economic development strategy. And Blake's going to walk you through just a couple of slides to really highlight, this isn't the full pitch, but every single prospective funder sees a broader deck and sees the role that your procurement work fits into our strategy for the overall growth of the region moving forward over the next 4 years. It's absolutely critical. So Blake is just going to provide a thumbnail of that to help you understand where that fits in, and then a couple of options for you to see where and how you might be able to invest in this, invest through us as a C6 or invest in us as a C3 and our community development financial institution. So with that, Blake, I will turn it over to you just to run through the context, please.
Sounds great. Thanks, Julie. And thanks, John and Stacia, for allowing us to join the roundtable today. So leading off, as Julie just mentioned, right, Indy Chamber is the regional economic development organization for the 9-county metro. And the Accelerate Indy is the Indy Chamber's regional economic development strategy to position the Indy region as the premier destination for talent and opportunity for all. We compare our progress against peer markets of Columbus, Ohio, Charlotte, Denver, and Nashville in 36 key indices and 3 core metrics, those being net new jobs, net migration, and perception. Next slide, please. So we're entering the second phase of Accelerate Indy with a 4-year economic development strategy encompassing the pillars of talent, image, business, and place. One of the key recommendations of the Accelerate Indy strategy is business equity for Indy. So as we enter the second phase, so as you know, with business equity for Indy, right, where you guys live here within the procurement and participation pillar, the charge of the procurement and participation pillar is to increase the launch, growth, and success rates of Black and minority enterprises through expanded procurement and supply chain opportunities, technical assistance, formation and development of new businesses, and efforts to expand access to capital. And as a side note, when Julie and I have meetings with all of the investors we're talking to regarding Accelerate Indy, we highlight a specific slide in all of our conversations. Business equity for Indy is a key recommendation and a core value of the Accelerate Indy strategy. Next slide, please. So within the Accelerate Indy strategy, we're tracking specific metrics to measure our growth. I want to point out one metric specifically that relates to the important work your roundtable is addressing. The second metric here, it's probably a little small to see, but we'll provide a lead behind, which is establishment growth. This is a % change in the establishment growth from 2010 to 2020 that we're tracking here. We're currently last out of our peer markets, as I identified earlier, of Columbus, Denver, Nashville, Charlotte, with the establishment growth rate of 12.2%. Your work within the procurement participation pillar is a direct bullseye on this establishment growth metric, and your investment will directly aid in improving this ranking. Next slide, please. So what are the investment levels? There are investment opportunities to support, implement, or lead the work of the Accelerate Indy program. The $5,000 and $10,000 levels are the support of the work of the Accelerate Indy, and key recommendations like business equity for Indy and others. Based on your roundtable roles, investors at this level will receive a profile on the Life in Indy opportunity map. This is an enhanced profile at a $10,000 level. We'll go into that here in a second. The $25,000 levels introduce more opportunities for your leadership staff to work on the implementation of the overall Accelerate Indy strategy, as well as the Life in Indy opportunities map, as mentioned before. Finally, the $50,000 and $100,000 levels provide executive opportunities to lead the Accelerate Indy strategy on the Accelerate Indy Council or the Accelerate Indy Executive Council. Note, your investment, as Julie mentioned, can be applied to either our 501c6 or C3, and the Chamber will manage your fund specifically to this work and will report out expenditures and outcomes on an annual basis. So if we have a few extra minutes here, I do want to highlight one of the key benefits of all of our investors at 5,000 and 10,000 all the way up to 100 and beyond. Next slide, please. And one of this is the opportunity map. So again, the benefits of investment with Accelerate Indy and Business Equity for Indy procurement participation. This is the opportunity map. Is a talent conversion strategy of another Accelerate Indy key recommendation, Life in Indy. And if you don't mind dropping the link of Life in Indy into the chat, please. Life in Indy is partially funded by the Lilly Endowment at $2.8 million. This storytelling platform aims to raise the profile of the Indy region for future residents through the eyes of our current residents. And you can check out the link below to see some of the storytelling of places to live, things to do, employment opportunities. But the opportunity map is a component of Life in Indy, and again, and the overarching Accelerate Indy program. And the opportunity map is how you fit in as an investor. Life in Indy will spend on targeted digital marketing campaigns throughout the country to get more prospective residents in front of Life in Indy. When prospective residents are on the Life in Indy website, they'll be given the opportunity to fill out a form which plugs them into the conversion strategy here with the opportunity map. The opportunity map will share the company profiles of all investors and Accelerate Indy procurement participation investors as well. And so just highlighting here, you receive a profile, there is a opportunity to highlight one of your employees at your company as they can write an article of what it's like to work at your place of employment and a direct link to your HR director or recruiter. This is a tool that, again, Innovative is building out for us within the Life in Indy, another key recommendation of Accelerate Indy. And everyone gets a profile. And once we do these digital marketing spins around the country to attract more people to our region that become business owners, that contribute to our community, this is how we're allowing others to plug into the employment opportunities that currently exist. Next slide, please. So any questions with the investment levels? I know it's a big open group here, but we'll provide a leave behind on the entire Accelerate Indy strategy, which includes your work specifically with the Procurement and Participation Roundtable and Business Equity for Indy. Additionally, the investment levels, opportunities, and a letter of intent you may complete and return to me. But if you have additional questions regarding the Accelerate Indy strategy, our investment opportunities, and you want to ask individually, my contact information is located below in the slide, and I'll also place it in the chat. Thank you. John, Julie, anything else?
Very good, Blake. Nothing else at all. And so I will continue on after you all and be around to answer any remaining questions. But while you're still here, I would just like to say, using myself as an example, I'm going to contribute to the capital contribution personally by contributing to Accelerate Indy. And then I will direct most, but not all. I could direct it all. I'm going to direct most of that to Business Equity for Indy. But all of the objectives of Accelerate Indy are important to Central Indiana and beyond, and I want to support those as well. I say that because you all can do that as well. You can contribute that way as well, or you could contribute direct to Business Equity for Indy. Julie and
Yes.
Blake, do you have any comments before you leave? I know you have a hard stop in about 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, John. We really appreciate your leadership contribution, and we appreciate your example of the contribution and dedicating a portion of that contribution directly to Business Equity for Indy. And we just want to underscore that that is an opportunity available to everyone on this call. And we really, really want to thank all of you for your commitment to this work. It's absolutely critical. And the growth of these businesses could not be more important to the health and vitality and sustainability of our region. So thank you all.
Thank you so much for your time. If you all do have questions, we are running tight on our agenda today on our time. So go ahead and put them in the chat. And again, we will make sure those questions get to Julie, Blake, and or John to answer. So thank you, Blake and Julie, for being here. Thank you always for your words, John. And I just want to say again, the biggest barrier that we heard to Black-owned businesses and other minority-owned businesses was access to capital. And the way we are looking to overcome those barriers are, one, provide them opportunities to do more business with each and every one of you. And through our GAP fund, are growing with accelerated I forgot the last syllable of that. Blake, do you know?
That's close enough.
I always do that. But our GAP fund, which really provides working capital upfront for businesses who just can't afford some of these contracts that they can bid on if they have that working capital. So thank you again. And I am really excited now to move on to seeing this all in practice with our success story, 38th and Sheridan project. So we have Akila Darden and Pete Yonkman today. Pete Yonkman is president of Cook Group and Cook Medical in Bloomington, Indiana. He has been with the company for nearly 20 years, starting in 2001 as in-house counsel. Pete has served in a variety of roles for Cook, including leading one of the local manufacturing sites and as executive vice president for 10 business units. He was named president of Cook Medical in 2014, and in 2015 added the role of president of Cook Group. Akila Darden is president of the Darden Group and director of diversity inclusion for supplier diversity at IU Health. The Darden Group is an executive construction management and training firm, which started 1.5 years ago following the city of Indianapolis's most recent disparity study. That study found that women-owned and minority-owned businesses were underused in city contracting. Akila was named one of IBJ's 2021 Women of Influence. She's the president of the board for ACE Mentor Program of Indiana, a board member for Stand for Children Indiana, and a board member for the Advancement Center for Washington Township Schools, and is extremely passionate about mentoring and giving back to our community. Welcome, Akila and Pete, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stacia. It's good to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. We do have a quick presentation that we want to run through, and I know that a lot of you may be aware of the project that we're working on, because I want you to hear from Akila and the work that she did to really help us with this project. So if you can go to the next slide. Just to remind folks, if you haven't heard, we really are partnering with the community at 38th and Sheridan to build a new state-of-the-art medical device manufacturing facility. The project will bring about 100 jobs in the neighborhood. We have room to fill up to about 200. And we actually partnered with Goodwill here on this project because we knew a lot of the folks that were coming into the workforce may have obstacles to employment. And we wanted to make sure they had the right wraparound services. It could be childcare, it could be transportation, housing stability, maybe not have worked in a manufacturing environment before. Goodwill is really good at that. And they're going to provide those wraparound services, life coaches, those types of things for employees, and make sure that transition to employment is really good. We also are providing free education to all employees. We do that at Cook Everywhere, all the way from a high school diploma to a master's degree. And one of the things that we really heard from the community as we were going about this, and we'll talk more in a minute, is the community said, as we were there working with the community and really getting to know people, was they said, you know, it's great, these jobs are coming, but the building project itself, so often we see that these projects come and the people who are working on the projects don't look like us. You know, the community here is about 95% people of color. And it was really important, what we heard was really important, that the workforce reflected that community. And so we set a goal of making sure that the construction project would be 100% minority-owned businesses, but also we went beyond that and said, we want to make sure that we provide as many local jobs as possible, and even provide opportunity for people to come into construction who maybe not had been there before. So Akila was key to that. I think we could not have, I know we could not have done that without her help. and we'll hear from her in a minute. The other interesting thing here was the community said, hey, we really want to share in the success, that this is successful. So CICF came in, it was a tremendous partner, and they invested on behalf of the community. Community actually owns 51% of the building. And so as rents are paid, money and proceeds will go back into the community to support future local businesses as well. So that's our manufacturing site. We're excited, we're on pace. That picture is a few weeks old. We're actually going to be turning that building over from construction to our manufacturing teams in about a week or so. And we hope to have the first product rolling off the line in April or early May. Next slide, please. We also heard from the community that as we were there and really getting to know people, was that this is a food desert. And 5 grocery stores had left recently. There weren't a lot of stores that were within this community. People had to travel long distances by bus, or they were shopping at gas stations. And especially people with transportation issues, really seniors and other people were having a hard time getting access to quality food. We were fortunate to meet 2 local entrepreneurs, Michael and Marcus, who were there already building a grocery store in the community. And I think this goes to the point of capital. We heard about it earlier. They were really struggling to get the capital they needed to be able to make it a full service grocery store. They were able to piecemeal things together, but they couldn't get the supply chain because they didn't have the scale. They didn't have access to capital, and they weren't able to get the right level of inventory for folks. So we again sort of built a coalition and said, hey, I think we can help here. And so we were able to again partner with CICF and Goodwill, who's going to provide hiring support, HR support. And we partnered with Martin University to create a curriculum for people to learn how to run grocery stores. And it's really been great. And again, we had the same goal of making sure that we have 100% minority participation in the construction. So next slide, please. And I just want to highlight here, I think this is an important point that, you know, if you were in a business and you were to ask for a report about this community, this is what you would see. And you would see a lot of negative things. And I won't go through them all because you probably all heard them on the news. But when you're in the community, it's not at all what you see. And I think that was the great part that Akila and others were able to do, is to introduce us to people in the community. Ashley Gervitz obviously was instrumental in that. And we really met a lot of really talented, really good people who are working very, very hard in the community. And it did not at all reflect what we see in the news. And I think that's an important point, that sometimes these reports that we generate and that we create become self-fulfilling in a sense. And so we really encourage people to ignore the reports and come meet the people. So next slide, please. And this is what we learned and what we've met, and our neighbors now in this community are highly engaged. We have a high rate of home ownership. People who have been in the community, they were there when it was thriving, they want to be thriving again. And the other thing we learned was there really are a lot of resources in this community that, frankly, a lot of communities don't have. They're highly organized, they have a vision, and they're working really, really hard with passion. And you can't find that energy always. We've worked in a lot of different communities around the world, really. And sometimes you go and you just don't find people with a vision and passion and hard work. And that's what we found here. And so we've been very proud to partner with this group. Next slide, please. So this is what the community told us as we were getting to know them. They wanted us to build with them, not on them. And I know exactly what they mean by that. They wanted us to understand the history of the place. They wanted us to understand the resources that were there and add our energy to their resources. And so we really tried to take that partnership approach. There are tremendous amounts of history in the community, and a lot of resources have already been built. And we want to make sure that we're aligned with those and not working in crossways with them. And then I talked about this issue of they really wanted the building process to reflect the community. And so that was new for us. We set a goal of 100%. We have never done that before. We weren't sure it was possible, to be frank. And we were fortunate to meet Akila, who you'll hear from in a minute. And I asked her, is this possible? And she said, absolutely, it's possible. But you have to be intentional about it, and you want to have to do it. And just look in the right places. And she was able to connect us with the right people. And the other thing was, we wanted to make sure that not only was there minority ownership, but that the people who were doing the work were people from the community and reflected the community too. So next slide, please. So our goal was 100% minority owned business. We actually achieved 97% people of color, and the other 3% were women owned and veteran owned. And so we didn't reach our goal. And I think at 97%, we reflect the community there and show that it was possible to do that. Next slide, please. I guess I'll end here by just saying, here's what we learned through the process. I think I've heard it a lot in my own world that more than 30% is really hard and that you really can't get beyond 30%. And we learned that's not true. You just have to think about it a little bit differently. There really are a lot of more qualified minority-owned business enterprises than what you might think. There are a lot of contractors out there and a lot of people who are really anxious to do this work, but sometimes just don't have the normal contacts or they're just not part of the system. And so often we rely on our existing system, our existing communication channels, and that's why it just takes thinking a little bit different. One issue we did find was that when we were talking with certain general contractors, they have pre-existing union contracts that would not enable them to reach that 100% goal. And so we had to think about that a little bit differently and have to work and make sure we understood those union contracts. That was not something I was aware of, but if you're thinking about something like that, it is something to think about. Timeline and costs were the same. We have, every project has challenges. Every project has issues. We had those here, but we worked through them just like any other project. It was no different than any other project we worked on. There really are entrenched systems, communication pathways, old habits, right? We have systems in place that we all use. We all know who we talk to. It just requires thinking a little bit different, and you got to find people who are willing to work with you to think differently. So often people are on time schedules, and they just go back to their old pathways, and we were fortunate to find people who would work with us differently. And I would also say, so just from a practical standpoint, there were tremendous benefits that we received from this project that we wouldn't have if we'd done our normal way. We built new relationships that we've never had before. We have new supporters, frankly, and new friendships that we wouldn't have had we not done this. And we really found the community really embraced the project because of it and really became a co-owner with us. And I also think we got a lot of support from government entities, not-for-profits. People really wanted to become engaged because of the goal. And I think what we've seen from some of the folks who have participated here, these building projects aren't just building projects. They really can be a catalyst for hope. And I don't think we think about it that way, but it really is. And sometimes it's the first step for somebody to get into the construction industry. It's the first step to a career. Those are the kind of things that really impact people. So I'll end with that and pass it over to Akila, because she was really the catalyst that got us here.
Hello, everyone. So Pete is so humble. So I'm going to talk a little bit really quick off script to say that Cook Medical and Pete Youngman gave a solopreneur, African-American women-owned construction management company an opportunity to bring opportunities to a disadvantaged community. And I just want to say thank you. So if you go to the next slide, do you have the next slide? Okay, so Pete also said we didn't meet our goal. So Pete's goal was not 100% of people of color. So we were able to do 97% people of color, but 100% diversity. And I know percentages, I'm an engineer, so we're gonna break that down. 97% MBE is 16 African-American businesses, 1 Native American, 1 Asian, 1 women-owned business, and 1 veteran-owned business. So we started out with 100% MBE participation, but we cannot make a company, grow a company in the 45 days we had to get 100% participation. So we moved broader to women and veteran-owned businesses. One thing they mentioned to me in the interview process is we are going to be intentional and that we are going to build for and with and not to, which meant we needed to find out who the community was and what they had to offer. So I wanted to preface my presentation to say intentional conversations. So we were very intentional with our conversations and equitable outcomes, which is different than equitable opportunities. Equitable outcomes means you get people to the table, you stay with them at the table, you see what they're doing at the table and help in any facet that you might see they need help with. Get them to the end of the project and beyond with further contracts. So it's not a one-off, it's not check the box, it's very, very intentional. So when you find the needs of the community, you have to meet them. So some of the things that we heard was, well, one, we had to go talk to the community. We're building something. What do you do? And from there, we were able to find out what they need. I don't know about construction. Great. Let's give you free construction certification classes and free OSHA 10 safety classes. So then you get to know about construction. What are your interests? Oh, I know what your interest is. This fits this scope of work. Let's get you there. Let's have career fairs to bring in the unions, because we also heard from the unions about diverse talent. So unions, come over here in the community, and we're going to have some career fairs. Also, too, it was just constant communication with the community. We have community newsletters. We have the progress of the work. We are highlighting every single subcontractor and how they got started. So if you're interested in growing a business, you can see how they grew their business while physically seeing the construction. We listened. Oh, you have a catering business. Well, we're going to appreciate the subcontractors on site, and we want you to cater the event. I could go on and on and on. It's not just building a project, it is changing the socioeconomics for the subcontractors, for the community, for the workers who never thought they would be in construction. And one special entity here is the Instagram Live. Some people, it's not your father's construction, it's different. So we're going to show you not only diversity on the site, but we're going to have the diversity speak on what they do and how they got there. Next slide. So I said all of that to say, let me give you some tangible steps, because I can go through all the highlights and all the grandiose things. And I know people will say, well, we can't do that here. We can't do that here. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. Pete Yonkman set the goal, 100%. That's it. So what I heard was that if you are not diverse, then you're not qualified for this project. But I have 6 others with other general contractors somewhere else where you can participate. So we were very clear and stated the goal unapologetically. We communicated the goal, and that's what we did. But for people to feel included, if you didn't fit that category, here is other opportunities in construction for you. We created a list. So when the general contractors went out to bid, they had a list. So it wasn't like, you're going to do this. Let me show you how to do this. And I'm going to help you. If you fall short in a category before bid time, I'm going to make some calls for you. And then I'm going to get the information to you. So I'm helping. And we called people within the community. Do you have a cousin, aunt, uncle that's in construction? Let's figure out what your sweet spot is and build around it. Trust but verify. This is very, very important. As much as I'm passionate about construction and diversity, where do I go to find out that what she said is true? We created a website. The website had job seekers. So anyone that wanted to find a job in construction could click a button, fill out a 10-second survey, and get it to us. So we filtered 130 job seeker applications and got 130 people to a direct connect with subcontractors. If they didn't do that, all the subs are on the website with the phone number, so they can go a direct connect. The website is very important because you can see progress as well. And we talked again and listened to the community, not just in the beginning, not just beginning with the end in mind with the economic impact, but also through the project. Neighbors, how you doing? Okay, you're doing well. Okay. This is what we're doing. This is what you can expect. This is the closure. And this is why you might have to take another road. And then again, we wrote down the barriers and we found solutions. Liz came along with us and allowed some of our individuals to take a construction management master class. So now we're not only teaching technical, we're now teaching management and operational and administrative works. The success, again, is in the process. So it wasn't that we celebrate 100% participation. We still had to get the workforce on the job site. Okay, next slide. Oh, really quickly, because I know Pete's I'm gonna go back to Pete, is that we were intentional about equitable opportunities. We provided training for free in the neighborhood. We provided upskilling, and we met the people where they are. We celebrated those subcontractors who were doing exceedingly well. So back to you, Pete.
Yeah, thank you, Akila. It was as I said, we couldn't have done it without you, and your passion and energy for it was remarkable. And you said we could do it, and we did. And I just want to say thank you for that. The other thing I would say is, as I watch as a community, as we're building infrastructure, we're building a lot of great programs through the chamber, through CICP, through state policies. Those policies need a site for enactment, for lack of a better way of saying this. And so what we found was, when we started an actual project, all of those systems could plug into that project and bring the support, whether it's education, training, employment readiness. All those things were there, but those things that are there need the work to go along with it. And when they have that combination, it really moves quickly, and it all really is able to be fulfilled. So I would just encourage other folks who are on the phone to view every project that you have as this transformative opportunity, because they are. And no matter what the size of them they are, if it's one job or if it's 1,000, it has the potential to be transformative for somebody. And when you do them in this way, you get so much more support than you would have had for just any other building project, right? And so I hope people will consider this and take on a similar model. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Pete and Akila, for showing us that this is possible. I know it wasn't easy, but you stuck with it, and now we all have some inspiration because of your efforts. So thank you so much, and thank you for making time to be here. Okay, next up, I want to turn it over to Reggie Williams to talk a little bit about any comments that you have on what you just heard, but then also speak somewhat on the peer advisory program. Reggie, are you there?
I'm here, and I'm even a little emotional. Pete, you and Akila have evoked emotion out of me that I didn't even think was there, because I'd just given up on the world. I've been doing this a long time, 4 decades. And I started out like you are, where you are now, as a field worker for the Urban League. And I haven't seen the kind of commitment that you embody, 30 years. So you have made me a believer. And I facilitate processes that make things like this happen. But this one really threw me. This one really made me emotional, because I've lived in those communities. I started out as a kid on welfare. I was on public assistance till I was 18 years old. I didn't know what a grocery store was till I was almost 20 years old. Supermarket. All I saw was drug dealers. I never saw us have or own anything. So when you say what you've done with your company at Cook, you and Akila have created a model that all of us can emulate. And you did not displace anyone. There were still opportunities for people who were not people of color, who were not women. This is what we're trying to do here. So my hat's off to you. I just couldn't start my piece without discussing that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It means a lot. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
The one defining principle, intentional, is where we go from here. We had a lot of speeches, a lot of discussions, but this is the first time we've had a success story that really demonstrates intention. So we want to move from discussion to intention. And to do that, I want to outline just a few of the key ingredients that are absolutely critical. If you watch the chat, you heard from Carolyn Mosby, who leads the organization that has a demonstrated track record in creating this kind of change. This is what I want to say to what she said. CEO leadership, executive leadership, senior leadership top-down support. What we're trying to do is to establish supplier diversity as a routine element of the business. That means we must have executive sponsorship. That sponsorship sets the tone for the rest of the organization. It becomes a part of the fabric of what you do, and it becomes routine, and it's not something extra. Companies that I work with, such as Coca-Cola, such as IBM, you don't have meetings about supplier diversity. It's an expectation. It's the same expectation you have for purchasing products and services at competitive cost. It's the same expectation you have for purchasing products and services that meet our quality standards and other specifications. So we have to weave it into the routine, and it begins with senior leadership. So we're going to break up shortly into 4 modules. And these 4 modules are these roundtable breakouts are going to be led by, interestingly enough, peer advisors. These are people that have been doing this as long as I have, who will work with each of you on different aspects of putting together this supplier diversity infrastructure. Richard Wise will lead the roundtable on the internal infrastructure. Let me just go cover just a couple of things that Richard's going to cover. The infrastructure. You cannot have success in a company, large or small, without shared ownership. What are you saying, Reggie? Your business units, in fact, in some cases, the business units are run by little czars. And these czars decide what they're going to do for their business unit, almost independent of the rest of the company. If they are not aligned with what you are doing in purchasing or procurement, it won't get done. So they need to have some skin in the game. They need to be a part of the process as a stakeholder. The other element that Richard's going to talk about in the internal infrastructure is, and this is very important, an accountability process. It begins with that senior executive. If there is a senior executive of a major corporation in Indy, and he suggests that he has, or she suggests that she has a supplier diversity program, the first indicator of its validity is whether or not that executive holds himself or herself accountable. It must be a part of his or her performance process, and he must be evaluated, and it cascades down to the rest of the team. So that's very, very critical. He's also going to talk about, and this is very important, he's also going to talk about establishing goals, specific metrics, performance milestones that have been outlined that we will all strive towards. If all of us were trying to become archers and we're going to work out for the Olympics, and we were shooting without a target, how do we know how well we're doing? We must have some way to gauge our performance and our growth. So that's Richard's. Then there's going to be a presentation from Debbie Evans, who's excellent at this. She's going to deal with issues involving ground up programs. Reggie, I have an interest in doing this. I want to do business with women and minorities, but Reggie, I don't even know whether I'm doing business with women and minorities. I've got 10,000 vendors. How do you help us? She will focus on that. You must classify your vendor base. You must classify your pool of suppliers to identify the groups that they fall in. Now, if you've been with us before, and this is your 3rd session, you've already been educated on the most at-risk groups. The most at-risk groups: African American males, Native Americans, African American women. They are the ones most at risk that we must focus on. But in total, We're talking about all companies run and owned by people of color and women, as well as, I don't want to leave them out, veterans and the LGBTQ community. We don't want to exclude anyone. So this ground up process means getting a baseline, establishing goals, but most of all, for some of you, because you don't even have this appointment yet, you need a team lead. You need an Aquila Darden to run your program, that manages the program, that keeps everyone in focus. Because it's not about her. She's the catalyst that brings the whole, she or he is the catalyst that brings the whole team together. So for some of you, you have yet to even name a team lead, and we're going to ask you to do that and show you how to do. Oh, by the way, you don't have to go out and hire the director of supplier diversity for $100,000. You can have your own team members take on this assignment, and it can be a shared assignment that rotates annually. Many companies do that because of the lack of budget. Then we're going to hear from Jamie, who's from Eli Lilly, on advanced programs. How do I strategically identify high potential categories where there's a high likelihood of identifying women, minorities, and veterans to compete for my work? Which areas of the marketplace is there an abundance of minority companies that we can easily tap? Could you imagine one of your companies here in this meeting brought me on as a consultant and said the following: we're going out for a contract, multi-year contract. It's for landscaping and snow removal. They didn't have a minority firm included in that process for landscaping and snow removal. That tells you where their commitment is. So this means low-hanging fruit presents the quickest, easiest way for us to get started in the process of supplier diversity procurement. And then Holly will cover processes, procedures, and protocols. What's the most significant protocol, Reggie? What is the defining element that every company we have 122 people involved in this session today. If you are to determine that any of them are successful, what is the defining element you would want to see? And here it is. Most of you have been here for three sessions, so you know this already. It's called fail-safe. Fail-safe. No contract, in fact, Mr. Yonkman probably wrote this policy. No contract shall be consummated without consideration of qualified minority, women, or veteran suppliers. No, if you can say that, that's step one. No contract shall be consummated without consideration of qualified minority, women, or veterans. What's the key word? Qualified. Nobody's asking you to give someone a free ride or a free gift. There are many minority, women, and veteran suppliers in areas that you would be shocked that provide outstanding services. So that's part A of fail-safe. In the event contractors cannot be identified, sufficient lead time must be extended to ensure strategic sourcing for competitive sources. Now, that doesn't mean you have to contract with somebody because they're a certain color, or you have to contract with somebody because they're a certain gender. It just means that you must consider qualified sources. So these are the basics that we're sharing that I think will take us to the next step where we start doing the execution. So the goals of the peer advisor program are to provide or to impart the information that you need that I've just outlined. We want to improve the success of the company. We want to remove barriers and capitalize on strengths. And we want to broaden personal networks. Now that's the most important part. Everything we talk about lies in the foundation of relations and decision-making that's based upon companies having removed unnecessary risk, establishing a comfort level with prospective suppliers. So we want to broaden these personal networks. And that means having exposure. For example, one of the unique tools that we use is called Lunch and Learn. Let me say it again. Lunch with the N sign, the letter N, and learn. Every month, we're asking your company to meet with a prospective supplier in an area where you buy products or services, where there's a potential for a marriage. And those suppliers that you meet with need to be from those at-risk groups, particularly African-American males, Native Americans, if we can find them, and women. This means you're forming the basis for what Reggie said, relational business. Everything happens through relationships. That's just one of the tools we're going to share with you. So, next slide. The peer advisors will help companies build their organizational structure. It's already starting. Companies will meet with their advisors at least 2 or 3 times a quarter in a small group, one-on-one, advising sessions to help companies successfully implement. Let me tell you where this came from. I'm the big time consultant, all right? The big time consultant learned from you. We came into this process and then met with Gordon, who is the chairman, and he said, Reggie, we need mini-me's, little mini Reggies. Let's form peer advisors. And those peer advisors can reach many more companies so that supplier diversity has a multiplying effect for all of the companies. I loved it. I said, Gordon, I wish I'd come up with it. It's absolutely brilliant. So the peer advisors allows us to leverage and to expand the numbers of people that are already, all of these people are volunteers. And the reality is you can't beat that. That means that they have commitment. You see, this volunteer group, these peer advisors, starts from having passion for doing this, passion for supplier diversity. Passion leads to commitment, and commitment leads to success. Next slide. So without further ado, I believe my colleague Debbie is going to open this session up. Are you ready, Debbie?
I am.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right. So Reggie's already done a phenomenal job of introducing each one of the guides or facilitators for this breakout session. So once again, I'm Debbie Evans, and I will be talking about stakeholder engagement for those of you all who have a program or don't have a program, but you're looking to actually strongly develop that into a robust system. Holly Harrington will be leading one of the sessions, the breakout rooms. Jamie Samuels from Lilly, Holly's from the Indianapolis Airport Authority, and then Richard Wise with Indiana University will also be leading a session. So we will all be in a breakout room here shortly, as soon as Tierra Stacia puts us into a room. We encourage you to stay in the room that you're in, and then we're going to come back together after these breakout sessions are completed. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for coming to the breakout room.
Thank you, Debbie. In just a couple of minutes, you should see a button pop up on your screen, either at the very top or in the middle, that says join a particular breakout. Please click on that button. And if by chance it doesn't pop up on your screen, we will assign you to your room manually on the back end. So just be a little patient, but we'll get you there shortly. And we will reconvene with the full group in about 40 minutes. Okay.